The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show. And
the summer of 82 at 40.
Weekend by weekend look at the movies released during the summer of that year. And as always with me on this summer-long journey from Forbes, Scott Mendelson.
Happy to be back.
Yes.
Third time's hopefully the charm.
Third time.
Third one, yeah.
Multiples of 3 will always be the charm for this journey. This episode, we'll be looking at the weekend of May 21st through 23rd. And this has been fun. This is fun. I think this is going to be one of the meatier weeks that we have. We've got a Death Wish-esque movie that is very not available to find. And we'll probably talk why maybe it is. We've got
I had to slit a few throats to get it.
Yes. We've got a experimental film from a comedic pair, and then we have just an action classic film that was pivotal. And this weekend, I'm going to note up top, limited release Annie came out this weekend, but we're shifted Annie to its wide release. So we'll discuss Annie in June when it was opened to more theaters, but it did open to 12 screens, I think, on this weekend. I think, Scott,
so
I'm not
we're
sure.
Discussing Annie tomorrow.
Yes. It's only a day away. Yeah. That's good. Yes, it's a hard podcast life for us. Something. Oh, we're just gonna bomb this episode. Bad. But yeah, that's this week. I'm really looking forward to this week. And this week was like, okay, this is gonna be fine. And then when I watched the film, so I'm like, oh, we got things to talk about this week. And it really does. And the Road Warrior, which will be at the end, is probably the most boring one for us to talk about. That's how good this episode is going to be. So as always, we start off with what's going on in the news this week.
It's the news of the moment.
During this week, the Unification Church founder Rev's son Myung Moon was convicted of tax evasion. The BBC warned that Britain will bomb Argentina during this week. There was some military action from the UK during this time too. Colin Wilson rode a surfboard 294 miles. It's a lot of water. And born this week, we have two people born. Tony Parker, known for his the Frenchman for the San Antonio Spurs, where he won multiple championships with Tim Duncan under Coach Greg Popovich and Manu Ginobili, that part of that group. He was born this week. And Tay Zonde, the YouTuber known for Chocolate Rain, he was born on this week in 1982, meaning I'm older than them. And so is Scott. But we're going to take a look at our first movie this week, Fighting Back.
Thieves, pimps, prostitutes, and drug dealers, beware.
You tell your friends to stay out of this neighborhood.
Oh, you're real tough, huh?
When I come back, I don't want to find you here. If I do, I'm going to redecorate your face.
John, you cannot go around shooting up bars.
But this thing is bigger than what the police can do.
John D'Angelo will do anything to make his neighborhood safe. He's Fighting Back, rated R.
Starts Friday, National Westwood, Hollywood, in theaters and drive-ins.
This is directed by Louis Teague, written by Thomas Headley Jr., David Zalag Goodman, and starring Tom Skerritt, Patti LuPone, Michael Sarrazin, and Yaphet Kotto. It's a hard crime story about Philadelphia shop owner who has had enough of the criminals' violences and ravages. He organizes a patrol of civil people. It all starts to go wrong because his team's actions are taken as racial discrimination.
Spoiler, they kind of are.
I want to say this. I nicknamed this movie, Scott, Tone Death Wish.
For the record, and I'm only making fun of you just for the sake of our entertainment value, I've never heard the phrase violences before.
Violences, yes. That was what the tagline was that I pulled. I didn't write that. So
Really?
I'm just reading copy. Yes. It was,
Someone wrote out violences.
I believe that was on the back of the VHS box. From which I need to mention, this so far in our journey, this was the hardest film to find. And this, I'm trying to do things with this as legit as possible in finding and watching the films. I do the show anyway. This film, I went down a rabbit hole, could only find the trailer. Thanks to a friend of the show, we were able to access this movie. This was potentially a movie we weren't going to be able to see, but we found out it was only ever, after its theatrical run, it was only ever released on VHS in the United Kingdom. It was never released on home video here, and no Laserdisc, no DVD, no, it's not ripped from somewhere on YouTube. It's not, torrents aren't sitting around with this thing. I had to call in some favors, and I got us a copy to watch for this episode. So far, we're going strong. We haven't missed a movie. If there are hard ones to find in the future that you might know of, and you want to help us out, we are more than willing to take the help, because we want to have as complete a journey as we can. But now back to,
But if you get caught, never heard of you.
Yeah, we don't fucking know you. We don't know you at all. So this one,
You are captured and or killed. We will disavow any knowledge of your existence.
right? In the UK, it was called Death Vengeance, not Fighting Back. We'll say that. This, like, Scott,
Sounds like a pick one from column A, one from column B kind of title.
right?
Death Vengeance. Okay, that works.
Yeah, well, they took Wish from us, so Death flip a coin in the pond? No.
Well, it's no alligator, I'll tell you that much.
No. So what is exactly the intent of the author in this movie? Like, I couldn't, like, I don't know if I can tell. I don't know. I think it's maybe not the good guy. I don't know.
I think there's an intent to make a film akin to Death Wish or akin to Vigilante that is a little bit more serious, a little bit more grounded, more of a, this is a real crime drama that really deals with the issues that these other films only exploit, blah, blah, blah. Because there is it's not a particularly gory picture.
Right.
There's not a ton of violence. Again, it's not a Death Wish movie. It's not
Right.
a Death Wish movie, Jesus. And hold on a second. Oh, sorry, that's fine. And it does broach the racial context and economic context of urban vigilante pictures of the 1970s and 1980s. It's a case of where you could almost think that Dio De Laurentiis was a producer on this, right?
I think he might have been, yeah.
If not, I apologize. Was again trying to do what if Death Wish, but trying to be less exploitative.
There's no vigilante-ism to it. Well, they call it vigilante, but these people are out public eye, not hiding it. Like, it's very public. Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a private protection. It's private protection force or whatever.
Organized militia.
Yeah, basically, it's more of a militia thing than a vigilante running in the night and gutting people down to the car. But again, I mean, politically, it was. I rewatched the first Death Wish before the remake came out. God, it was 4 years ago already. I forgot we lost 2 years. And what struck me about the film is that, for one thing, it's a real movie. I mean, it doesn't, the sequels are gore cartoons, but the original one is trying to be a drama. And to the extent that the characters openly discuss the politics in play, and just, you know, cavalier. We're two adults having a conversation about this kind of thing, by the way. That, you know, not to sound like Grandpa Simpson, but, you know, feels foreign to today's action/blockbuster marketplace. You know, for heaven forbid you have a sympathetic character expressing an incorrect point of view. But that's Death Wish. This is something else. Again, I think by a skewed way, the fact that it's less exploitative and less over the top almost makes it more quote unquote problematic than something like Vigilante, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Or something like Death Wish 3, which is, you know, when you think of what a Death Wish movie is, Death Wish 3 is it. I mean, it's basically at the end of that movie, they're, you know, him and the cop are running around like gunslingers of the Old West, you know, basically living out, you know, a shoot 'em up video game from the 80s. It was Lethal Enforcers, the movie, before Lethal Enforcers existed.
That's true.
You know, Hogan's Alley or whatever.
Yeah. Because there's a one scene where he's like carrying the ammo and the guy's carrying it for him, walking through. Yeah, it was a shooter game.
Which is what's interesting is that, you know, I assume we can talk spoilers since this movie for all intents and purposes doesn't exist.
We have a disclaimer at the top of every show.
You know, despite the relatively realistic as a stretch, but I would say heightened realism of the picture, you still have a film where the main bad guy is killed by a deadly water balloon,
right?
Which kind of took me by surprise because, you know, it's you know, it's explosives poured into a water balloon, drops in a car, kaboom, movie's over. And also, I mean, it ends with it's one of the few vigilante movies I've seen that ended with what I would consider a super duper mega happy ending.
Yeah,
you know, there's no, you won, but at what cost? Ooh.
But I felt that way as a viewer. Like, it's really like, because I don't know if they want us to root for Tom Skerritt in this movie, if they're trying to show that maybe he's gone over the top. I couldn't tell, and that was really ugly. Like, the fact that like this leads, because his vigilantism leads to him starting a group, which becomes their own thing, and then he starts getting political people approaching him about stuff. He's become popular, and they convince him to run for office, and then police are sharing favors with him, and at the end, like, he is given the location of the guy he's been wanting the whole movie to get back at, and for the police wanting some sort of political favors down the line to go murder this guy, as we hear right after that he won the election. So he's going to be, we see him become corrupt at that point, and that know that his path is only more of that. And it's like, wait, were we supposed to be like, oh, it's all good now? Or I was like, oh, this is dark.
Yeah.
This is like,
it's loosely based on a real person, a guy named Anthony Imperelli, I believe was his name. He was a community leader in the Italian American community leader back in the 1960s.
Don't they have like clips of him in the movie? Actually, yeah.
And long story short, I don't want to bungle the history, but he did achieve some level of political success, partially as a result of basically, take back our community type activism. Yeah, that did arguably blur the line into racially motivated vigilantism. Yeah,
because this movie, like, it starts out when he hits his group, it's like they're just going out looking for trouble. Yeah. Like, they go into a bar and just harass the crap out of people. Like, and it's always where black people are hanging out. Which, to be fair, the movie absolutely comments on that. The movie does comment on it. And Yaphet Kotto plays a character that brings it to him, and then he proves it to him, because there's a point where he brings two guys that probably did something to his mother. Was it where they stole the mother's ring, and he cut off her finger to steal the ring, and he takes it out on the black guy. And
at which point things only get better for him. Right. He's already in the thick of the political camp, I think it's a councilman, gig. And again, that scene leads to very little soul searching. Yeah. But again, I mean, sign of the times, blah, blah, blah. To be fair, a lot of these urban vigilante pictures in the 70s and 80s were based on a mentality, whether true or not, that, big cities were really dealing with a rash of random violent crime.
Right.
You know, there's a mugger on every street corner. There's a home invader in every shadow, yada, yada, yada.
I mean, it goes through even to like comedies like the first Vacation movie when they stop on the wrong side of St. Louis. Like, yeah. So it's, it was part of the whole big city scary thing when I was growing up. Like, why would anyone want to live there? You're going to get I the pinnacle of those two, like there's a trio of them that really affected me in childhood was Jason Takes Manhattan, Batman, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Made you feel like if you went to the big city and the sun was just about to tip and touch the ocean or the horizon, you were going to get mugged, kidnapped, beaten, held for ransom, raped. Like, those were all going to happen to you if you got caught out in the city. Like, just bad people everywhere. Like, that was the vibe. And for what it's worth, if you watch any documentary on the glory days and the hoo-ha of the shining nostalgia for 42nd Street, it's not far off in New York for stuff. They talk about, the movies that played on there and the attitude, but it's like, what's that? Yeah, it doesn't all sound great, but the odd characters that would show up and stuff. But yeah, it's
definitely a movie of its time. And seeing Tom Skerritt in the role is interesting just because it feels like the kind of movie that should star Robert Forster.
Yeah.
Or, I guess a younger Ed Asner. It's an interesting artifact.
I mean, they almost have Skerritt like when he dressed and hairstyle and facial hairstyle to look like Bronson. Like it's like we want someone to mistake him on the poster, maybe see Death Vengeance and walk into this. Like it's
because this is when did obviously I think between Death Wish 2 and 3. I think 3 came out in 87 or did I should look this up.
Yeah. Can't remember.
Maybe 4 came out in 87.
2 was once canon started rolling. So they might have been after this. They might have both been after Death Wish 2 and 3.
Yeah. Death Wish 3 was 85. So this is right between the two. Death Wish 2 and Death Wish 3.
Mm-hmm. So this is before Death Wish was even. I mean, you had Vigilante. That was probably the only there's other ones of these because there was what was it called? The everybody thinks it's a knockoff of First Blood, but it came out after or before.
Interesting.
Exterminator. The Exterminator. That was about a non-vet that comes and his town's gone to shit and he takes it into his own hands. And everybody
obviously the 8,000 Walking Tall movies.
Yes.
And Miss 45. That was the 80s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Miss 45. That was the 80s. So yeah, there was that already. The sleazier or more exploitative ones were around. This was probably heading more in the drama, but even though they make little neat uniforms and have a car for their little club.
And that's what struck me as interesting about it. It was almost trying to not be exploitative, for better or worse. Because on one hand, yay. On the other hand, I was promised a trashier good time.
Yeah. Well,
why did that shooting victim at the convenience store not die? I'm disappointed.
Right. I want brains on the glass. Come on. Yeah.
It's like, come on. If I wanted to watch a respectable vigilante movie, I'd watch The Brave One with Jodie Foster.
Right.
But and if I really want, probably my favorite vigilante movie, I'm not getting into comic books or any of that nonsense, is James Wan's Death Sentence.
Oh, okay.
Unofficial. It's based on the book that was a sequel to the Death Wish book.
Right.
And without going into details, because it's worth seeing if you haven't seen it, it kind of deals with the whole, wait, you just thought this gang was just going to be okay with this thing? There is some blowback. And it's not even a matter of, fighting fire with fire or, oh no, your soul is corrupted. We're just like, what the hell do you think was going to happen?
Right. I love
you poked a bear.
I like Jeremy Saulnier's Blue Ruin from 2013.
Oh, yeah.
That was fantastic. That's very lifelike. It gives you a guy that's like a normal guy kind of doing it, and
very clinical.
Making human kind of decisions through it, and it's just it was a really rad movie. And
the first Death Wish, I think is good. It's a good picture. It's interesting. again, because I think it's more of a drama than an action picture.
Right. And if you could take them to it, the sequels are just trashy nonsense.
Part,
I mean,
part 2 is probably
it's a brutal
I'll be
one.
honest, I've only seen the first 3, and at least the third one's a cartoon.
Yeah, third one's a cartoon.
The second one is like right in the line of it's grotesque.
Yeah, the second one goes.
The worst part is that it's. Am I allowed to discuss Death Wish 2 spoilers here?
Yeah, it's fine. It's an old
movie. The way
movie.
that his daughter dies is actually funny.
Oh, she lands on the fence?
Yeah, she jumps out the window and lands on the fence like Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
And it's obviously very sad and very tragic in the context of the picture. Not supposed to be funny, but it is.
It's the moment where the series changes to what it is.
It jumps the fence or doesn't jump the fence. Attempts to jump the fence and doesn't quite make it.
Like we talk about a lot, that it's the second movie in a film's series or a franchise that really they all model off of.
Absolutely. And again, it is in the second one where it becomes less of a movie, a real movie, and more of a hard genre, self-aware franchise film. The Final Destination films.
Right.
Again, most of them are varying degrees of good, except for 4. 4 is like staring and watching paint dry. But the first one is a real movie. It actually has a lot to say about youth mortality and religion and all the issues that it's dealing with. It's a real movie. Yeah. And ironically, as you know, and I'm sure many of the listeners / viewers know, the original ending of that film was much more in line with the rest of the picture. In a way that I think would have included any sequels.
Yeah, true.
So, the ending that we got, which was where both the leads live, but one of the supporting characters goes out in a very cartoonish fashion, sort of set the tone for the sequels.
Exactly, yeah.
But anyway, I'm getting off script. I'll let you.
No, it's fine. When we do these, Final Destination, it did come out in the spring. That was a spring movie, wasn't it?
I did listen to the Out Now special on those, by the way. That was fun.
Oh yeah, that was we had the writer of the first one and the story by on the second one. Yeah, he's cool dude, Jeffrey Reddick.
Part 5 is awesome.
Part 5 is great. And excited. Hey, I'm up for a 6th one. It's been a while.
Oh yeah, whatever. I mean, it's what it is.
Fighting back. This movie has something to say, but I don't know what, and I don't know if it realizes what it's saying or how it's saying.
I'm not sure if it's something it should be saying.
Yeah. It has examples of things that I would be like, oh, that's an interesting turn, but in what way are we supposed to see them? Like, it's really confusing and it's really, really ugly, but it's a movie you're probably not going to find. And I don't foresee anybody putting this out on a Blu-ray or a streaming service. Like
Monday at a special time, a network television premiere. Robert Wagner, David Warner, and George Kennedy.
We've got explosive decompression.
No one can save the flight of the Concorde. Airport 79, starting at 8/7 Central and Mountain. Here on ABC.
But while people were maybe thinking about going to see that in the weekend, here's what they were watching on television during this week at the top 10 Nielsen ratings. This is one special is going to dominate this top 10. We talked about part 1 place last week, but the top rated show of this week was Marco Polo Part 3 on NBC.
Oh.
Number 2. Huh?
No, I thought we were going to talk more about the Secrets of the Third Reich.
Oh, no, that is done. That is done. Number 2 is 60 Minutes on CBS. Number 3, Coming Out of the Ice on CBS. At spots 4 and 5 were Marco Polo Part 4 and Part 2. And number 6.
Part 3 apparently is terrible.
Yeah, part 3 was the one that Part 2 really got everybody excited. They saw Part 3 and were like, I'm good. I'll tape it on my Beta Max. Number 6, Three's Company on ABC. Number 7, Trapper John MD on CBS. Number 8, Fantasy Island has placed in the top 10 on ABC. And number 9, Heart to Heart on ABC. Number 10, I believe this is a movie premiere, The Concorde Airport 79 on ABC. I will say, Love Boat placed at number 11, knocking on the door of the top 10 for this week.
I'm guessing we'll be talking about it next week.
Yeah, but Heart to Heart, that's been a consistent top 10er here. I remember that show, but I don't remember ever hearing about it being this blazing ratings juggernaut, but I guess that's why I know of it so much. But yeah, and it's funny, Three's Company's places a lot here, but I always think of that as like a 70s show for some reason, but we're in the early 80s. Right. We're in the early 80s. There's a hangover of like where the late 70s and early 80s look alike. So a lot of people think a lot of 70s stuff is actually early 80s. So there's that coming in. So we're not quite.
We've only got 3 networks. Everyone's a winner.
Yeah, everyone wins. Everyone places in the top 10. So that's the week. Some exciting shows. Marco Polo. Everybody was up for that. I can't remember what that was, or who was in it, but maybe I'll check it out sometime.
Steve Martin, the funniest comedian who ever lived, is Rigby Reardon in Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Oof. No criminal is too tough for him. No pain is too great. No joke too disgusting when Steve Martin finds out why Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Rated PG.
I'll buy 2 tickets.
Starts Friday at a theater near you.
All right, our next movie is Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, directed by Carl Reiner, written by Reiner, George Geip, and Steve Martin. It stars Steve Martin, Rachel Ward, Carl Reiner, and Alan Ladd, Barbara Stanwyck, Ray Milland, Ava Gardner, Burt Lancaster, Cary Grant, Ingrid Bergman, Veronica Lake, Betty Davis, Lana Turner, Fred McMurray, James Cagney, with Kirk Douglas and Humphrey Bogart as Philip Marlowe.
Brandon, many of these people are dead.
Oh, no, it's a
How
film.
How can that be?
Not in this film noir parody with a detective uncovering a sinister plot. Characters from real noirs appear as scenes from various films are intercut.
My God.
Yeah, this is a stage for this is another. They did The Jerk before, Steve Martin and Carl Reiner. They also do The Man with Two Brains. They did this, and what was the other one they did together? Oh, it's the one with
All of Me.
All of Me. That was it. It's an interesting spot for Steve Martin as he just is following up Pennies from Heaven, which is another golden age-esque Hollywood movie. So this is kind of his spot he's in right now with the box office with movies. I thought this was a pretty funny movie. I chuckled a bunch.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think it runs out of steam before the end.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's strongest in the first act when it's not relying as much on, intersplicing footage from other movies, and it's incredibly clever how it's done.
Right.
But it's also very obvious, especially as it goes on, that the story is constructed for the sake of these out of context clips.
Oh yeah, it's a really small movie. Like it has a couple cast members.
Yeah,
a couple location, all shot in a studio, and it's a really small story, because it has to figure out how to do this, but it's a tiny movie. And because you don't buy the clips mixed in with it too much, that it feels even smaller.
It's an interesting idea, and it's sort of an example of what does a parody look like when that this was 2 years after Airplane. This was 2 years before Top Secret. And obviously the film is very fond of the 1940s detective pictures,
right?
As well as the pre and post World War II melodrama contained within. Spoilers: it involves, the end result involves Nazis. And I think the first act is actually very funny because I think the film is funny on its own.
Yeah,
it's a standalone story that it's telling with clever dialogue and amusing visual cues.
Well, if you just like Steve Martin being Steve Martin,
the PI's got a sign on his office that says, "Don't fall in love with the client."
Yes.
So it sort of very gently pokes at the in an Austin Powers Scream kind of way, it pokes at the genre tropes. And while the clip mixing is the reason for the season, it almost sort of gets in the way of the pretty good movie that's being done, without relying on the clips.
Right. Yeah.
But Martin is terrific in this. He's very committed. It's always interesting to see him with dark hair.
Yeah. Well, it had to be dyed dark hair at this point. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen his hair that dark.
Yeah.
And he looks a lot younger just by default. And it's a very game performance, and he never really winks the material. He plays it as straight as it has to be played.
Right.
And again, not unlike the movie we just talked about, it's more of a time capsule than a film that holds up of its own accord. I mean, you said, I want to watch a great Steve Martin movie from the 80s, All of Me.
Yeah.
Or, late 70s, The Jerk, or whatever. Or, many years, Roxanne. This is more of it was certainly a one for me project.
No, it's an experiment that wholeheartedly. They're like, what if we did,
I think it made like 18 million on a 9 million budget. So it did fine financially. But no, as I said, what stuck out is how into it I was. I'll be honest, I had seen the film before and I knew the gimmick, but I sort of, while I was watching it, I forgot about the gimmick.
Yeah.
So it took me a minute when he picks, when he rings up and Humphrey Bogart picks up the phone. Like, that's right.
That's the whole point of this movie, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, this is the
and then,
movie
of course,
that.
Like, it's Cary Grant, it's James Cagney, it's Veronica Lake, and it's pretty much everyone that you would know from that era, which makes it an interesting educational tool, to be honest. But I almost enjoy when it was just being a comedy, a film noir comedy.
Yeah,
just of its own accord.
Yeah, that's the best thing.
Steve Martin and Carl Reiner, and forgive me, I forget the name of the young woman who's doing her best Barbara Stanwyck impression.
Her name is Rachel Ward.
Rachel Ward, who, I can say this, she's a smoke show. And she kind of reminded me of Barbara Stanwyck in the Lady Eve. Yeah. It's one of probably my favorite old timey rom com, just by default. I love it. I think it's awesome. But anyway, it's fun. It's fun to watch, especially as a what is this and how does it play? But again, in terms of does it work as a standalone movie? More of a film school exercise.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know how
double
many
bill
times...
with Gus Van Sant's Psycho.
Right.
Another movie that's absolutely useless as a standalone film, but is fascinating as an experiment.
I think if you haven't seen it and you like Steve Martin's comedy, I think it's got enough. It goes on that enough to warrant watching the whole. It's not long, thankfully. It's not a long
it's an
movie.
89-minute movie.
Yeah, and I call this a heat check kind of film where it's like you wouldn't expect it to come from a comedy, but it's like, what can we do with our film technology, messing around with editing, experimental film, but it's a technological heat check. I would even say they should go back to this film with the restoration processes we have now and re-edit those clips in so they look more seamless and see how it plays. I would be up for that. I know it's a lot of work for a movie that people probably forget, but I take another.
And I'm sure there's probably rights issues that exist now that did not exist.
Oh yeah, they probably lent it out for a theatrical. Well, I mean, it comes out. It's been out on Blu-ray,
it's on video
like
and stuff.
three times. So there's some sort of solidification, but they might need to go back in the vault for the new restoration. They might have the rights to those prints and not these it's a whole lot of thing. But I'd be
curious to know the legal issues of how that came about, because it's like half a dozen different studios.
Yeah, I mean, they license out. They say, okay, we'll do that. And then Martin's like, well, maybe I'll make a film for you down the road, Universal or somebody like that. This was the final film for Edith Head, the legendary costume designer. This is it. And it's kind of funny to throw back, and she does this movie where a lot of her famous costumes came from these eras.
Yeah.
I will say I have a question with this movie. How is this different? Resurrecting the dead for a movie like this, but CGI people are not.
I had this very similar thought when I was watching this.
Yeah.
I was wondering to what extent this would inspire, mostly online discourse about, is it respectful? Is it, is it grave robbing? Is this any different from Gene Kelly doing a vacuum cleaner commercial?
Right.
Yada, yada, yada. And honestly, I don't think it is. It's just, this is what they could do back then.
Because you could say that their acting is not in the context of what they agreed to do when doing the part. They are propped up as active cast members in a film. And I was just wondering, I couldn't find, I was wondering, like,
you're absolutely right.
Was there controversy of this in 1982?
Not that I've found. But I'll be honest, I didn't look that hard.
I haven't been one who cares too much in that regard, because
but I agree with you in that if you're somebody, I'm not saying you, but generally, if you are somebody that takes issue with, Carrie Fisher's cameo in Rogue One or Peter Cushing's cameo in Rogue One, especially,
right,
then this is the same thing.
Which I considered. I also called Rogue One a heat check movie. Like, can we really do this? And because I saw Peter, which plays on the big screen a lot better than home video. I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. To me, I was like, that's a neat try.
It's funny. I saw people like, oh, it's not perfect. Of course, it's not perfect. It's been dead for 20 years.
Yes.
I know what I'm seeing isn't real.
The guy who starred in like a billion vampire movies, Frankenstein movies, stuff is gonna hate this from the afterlife.
I mean, in terms of how it looked, I was like, it's as real as I would have expected.
Right.
I know it's not real because he's dead. So, I mean,
but they have the funny thing is they have no, like, where that comes into play, they have no problem with in the cartoon shows it having an extreme likeness. Like, to me, that the same. Like, that's what the character looks like. So if you draw him, that's the inspiration. I don't know. There's a whole lot of like actors fearing not getting parts that goes with that too. But you know what? There's tons of movies you don't get parts for either, and the people who did it knew what they were getting into. But I was just wondering that. I was like, this is the same thing.
Really is the exact same. Yeah, I had the exact same thought when I was watching this.
And
I'm wondering what kind of discourse this would bring up if someone tried to do something similar today.
And if people are listening to this and getting mad at us, and then Twitter starts blowing up, I'm going to be like, what? Oh, it must have been the Plaid episode. Because we are recording, as I must remember, we're recording this. It's January still, but this is dropping.
Humphrey Bogart can continue rotting in hell while his estate collects residuals from dead men don't wear Plaid.
Right, exactly.
That's my title.
Complain about it. It's his best appearance as Marlowe of all time. So, this would also inspire the hell. Like, this is what Muppet Babies would end up being. That cartoon was a lot of this stuff. And that's considered cute and fun. So, hey, resurrecting the dead, got to be consistent.
They'll make your dreams come true.
Right. But yeah, it's a weird recommend. If you recommend it, because it's a shtick that doesn't. You said runs out of steam. But Steve Martin's quite good, and the movie's better without the clips, honestly.
Yeah. It's obviously this is 6 years earlier, but it doesn't pass the Roger Rabbit smell test, which Roger Rabbit is a compelling and interesting story with or without the gimmicks,
right? But that's also a heat check movie, and
that's also one of the greatest movies of all time. So,
it is. I just watched it again recently, and I'm like, man, we talk about it, but we don't hold it up like we should.
Oh, because unfortunately, for better or worse, it was a one and done. The same reason nobody talks about Ghosts anymore, because it didn't turn into a giant franchise.
True. Yeah. Roger Rabbit and Zemeckis is always overlooked as like little Spielberg. Like, and he did Zemeckis's like Roger Rabbit was like almost like his like Star Wars, his like E.T. that where he pushed it after building himself up to like, what's this big thing? And I don't think,
Well, I think part of it is, and obviously he did fine, but especially after Roger Rabbit, the groundbreaking special effects movie work that he did was in terms of making stuff invisible. You don't notice the incredible effects work in Contact.
And Forrest Gump.
You hopefully don't notice the incredible effects work in Forrest Gump. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not something like Star Wars or even Back to the Future.
Even today with like the walk
you've never seen before.
He still does his walk.
Jesus. That was amazing. First 2/3 is boring as hell, but that third act, holy shit.
I do. I like Zemeckis. He's do his thing. I mean,
were you able to see it in IMAX at the time?
No, I didn't. I got the Blu-ray for review, but I still
appreciate
this. It worked. It worked.
Fair enough.
I can. My mind can go. I bet I would have felt like this watching it. I bet I would have.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the all-time holy shit movie-going experiences. It was my second weekend in LA. Living in Los Angeles, the Polar Express in IMAX 3D.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's.
I mean, it was just mind blowing because the leveling up in terms of what I felt was possible in terms of mainstream 3D film is like it really was a game changer.
Yeah.
I know everybody says everything else is a game changer, but that really was, holy shit, this is the future.
Yeah. And it proves, I mean,
but
even
that film is still fun on 2D.
Yeah, like I recently I took in Dune in 70 millimeter IMAX, and then I also watched it at home on 4K Ultra HD, and that one doesn't even have the cut for IMAX footage. It still looks like, when you have talent behind the camera that knows how to shoot movies, it still plays at home. Like, you just like feel how big it is.
Yeah.
Like,
I just on a whim, I watched the first act of Gravity about a week ago on HBO Max, and I had to force myself to turn it off and go to bed. And it's still awesome.
Yeah, that movie, that was a trip. That's one of my favorite in the theater with the 3D.
Me too.
Oh gosh, that was just, you just got that. That's the thing I think works so well, is like movies that take place in space, because you're in a dark room already, and because like I have loved just the feeling of like Gravity, like scenes from Avatar and like Interstellar just like look like, ooh, like you're just like dropped into space. And like even the Star Wars movies over in IMAX, just looking at the dots in space looks so cool. But
no, it's yes, there are movies that are enhanced and improved by the technology and or the manners in which you see them. But if the movie works, the movie works.
Yeah, true. Very true.
I mean, I've seen the last act of Avatar in an airplane, and it still rocks. I
mean, yeah, like we, as much as we want to be snots about, seeing it in the theater, I always am recalled to an article I read called "I watched the greatest films of all time on pan and scan VHS."
Yeah.
Which I saw The Godfather, pan and scan VHS.
Yeah.
I saw Lawrence of Arabia, pan and scan VHS. Star Wars, pan and scan VHS. So I sound like a hypocrite because those movies stuck with me. But I will say there are movies I didn't care for that when they finally came on to like proper Blu-rays and stuff like that, or seeing it in theater, I either found appreciation for or it grew when seeing that. So
2001.
2001.
I always respected what, obviously what it must have been like, but I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters until the re-release a couple years ago.
Gotcha.
And I went to the local IMAX and I sat as close as was comfortable, and like,
Lawrence of Arabia, that is, you get it.
One of these days I will take the night off and see that in the theater.
There you go. Yeah, that the work of Dario Argento and Lucio Fulci, I was never about, and then now they're two of my favorite filmmakers just because of actually seeing what I was supposed to, and the proper cuts, because that's a whole nother thing with chopping them up to sell to America.
Now let's turn to the Billboard album chart and check out the 10 biggest LPs in the land this week.
But speaking of America, the U.S. top 40, Casey Kasem, see what he has in store for us. Things move up and down this week. Get Down on It is our number 10 from Kool and the Gang. Number 9, I Did It in a Minute, Hall & Oates, fallen a little bit. Don't You Want Me enters the top 10 by the Human League. Like, don't you want me, baby? I was in a cocktail bar. Yep.
That much is true.
Yes. It hit number 1 and it is just fallen. Scott, Chariots of Fire, main titles by Vangelis, down to number 7.
Quick kill.
And this one always screws me up when I'm reading the top 10. I cannot wait for it to leave. And this week's the worst. Number 6, 65 Love Affair by Paul Davis. Number 5, moving up 4 spots, The Other Woman by Ray Parker Jr. There's something strange in the other woman's hair. Who are you gonna call? The other woman. Number 4.
Private Detective.
Number 4, that other woman's number is 8675309 Jenny by Tommy Tutone, moving up 1 spot. Number 3 is moving up 3 spots. I've Never Been to Me by Charlene Duncan. And number 2, Don't Talk to Strangers by Rick Springfield. He's creeping up. That Rick, he's like, I'm not just Jesse's girl. And then staying at number 1 for the second week in a row, Ebony and Ivory by Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder. So it's the second week at number 1. That's our Casey Kasem's top 10.
In the future, cities will become deserts. Roads will become battlefields. and the hope of mankind will appear as a stranger. The Road Warrior, rated R.
Starts May 21st at the Man's Vogue Hollywood and Man's National Westwood.
All right. And now to the movie you've probably all been waiting for us to talk about, sold in America as The Road Warrior, but when the credits play, it says Mad Max 2. Directed by George Miller, written by Terry Hayes, Brian Hennett, and George Miller. Starring Mel Gibson, Bruce Spence, Virginia Hay, and Emile Minty. In the post-apocalyptic Australian wasteland, a cynical drifter agrees to help a small gasoline-rich community escape a horde of bandits. So this is probably one of the most impressive blockbusters of the era. Maybe not appreciated as much right in the moment. It was appreciated, but its legacy. Yeah, it got good. Leonard Maltin is a humongous fan of this movie.
As was Ebert.
This
Who
is
then liked part 3 even more.
Yeah. This was one of the most dangerous looking movies ever made as well. Yeah. Fury Road is an impressive feat all its own, but that one at least had digital technology to take out bungee cords. It was probably a lot safer to do than this.
Probably.
This
and you were talking earlier about where a sequel sort of sets the template for a franchise.
Right.
Yeah, this is when people think Mad Max, they don't think Mad Max. They think
most people saw this first.
Yeah.
Most people. And the weird story of Mad Max is that like that first movie is so weird. It plays like that unnecessary like prequel we've been seeing like for so many years that you don't need that. And it's Mad Max Mad Max Origins. It actually came first, and it has the full-on template for boring, generic white male hero drama that comes before a movie you really like. Like it's insane. It's a good movie.
Yeah, it's a solid 3-star picture,
and it's impressive for what they do.
Trendsetter in terms of, sort of. Obviously, it didn't invent the apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic drama, but it sort of set the template, especially with Mad Max, whichever one you watch first. What I find interesting about Mad Max is that society is still kind of hanging on by its fingernails.
Yeah.
There's a certain, children of men mentality where, it's not the road.
Right.
Or, the Road Warrior or Waterworld. Society is still hanging in there. But there are obviously cracks in the seams.
Mm-hmm.
And up until the last act of the picture of Mad Max, it's basically a relatively conventional, police actioner.
Right.
And
until, does it start the wife dies? Now I'm an action hero.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that trope has been around since the dawn of cinema.
Yeah.
Birth of a Nation comes to mind.
Oh, right.
But no, and in terms of that kind of action and that kind of it certainly
because the 80s was full of that.
Yeah,
so
it certainly was. It may have been the Michael Jackson moonwalker of that particular cliche.
Okay,
where it didn't invent it, but it certainly made it popular and was identified with it.
Gotcha.
But and then 2-3 years later, you have the Road Warrior, which is a radically different picture.
Oh yeah.
It's for one thing, the character of Max, played by Mel Gibson, is almost feral.
Mm-hmm.
He has more or less lost his mind. His wife and baby have died as a result of the events of the first picture. Before of which he's a regular, normal police officer.
He's so far gone. It's almost as if he knows that happened, but doesn't remember how to feel about it happening.
Yes,
he's so far gone. It's a good portrayal by Gibson on that to showcase that just physically.
Was he dubbed in this one or just the first one?
The first one's just dubbed period. Yeah. I mean, I believe they have it with his voice and with somebody else too. So there's multiple dubbings of that first one, so you can hear it with his voice, I believe. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, listeners, but yeah.
And Mel Gibson obviously comes with such baggage these days, but at the end of the day, he was a great actor then, and frankly, he's still a very good actor. That's one reason why some of its work.
And one of the most gigantic stars of.
I mean, by the late, the mid 90s, he was so big that he was the single biggest selling point for Disney's Pocahontas.
Right.
Just because he was playing the love interest in that picture.
Right.
And ironically, his last starring vehicle before The Fall was M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which was his biggest worldwide grosser.
Right.
I think his biggest domestic grosser too, offhand. It did 228 domestic, 405 worldwide, and a $70 million budget in summer 2002. Now, obviously, that film wasn't just Mel Gibson's makeability. You had M. Night Shyamalan coming off of Unbreakable and The Sixth Sense. You had a very obvious play to the faith-based community. But you've seen Signs. It's a very subtext religious melodrama.
Right.
Shyamalan even called it his Walmart picture. Which, again, I think it rocks. I think
it's a fun movie, yeah.
But it certainly is a film that is attempting to be more mainstream after the initial reaction to Unbreakable was slightly more divisive.
Hey, I'm the guy who's always been there for The Village, so of course I like Signs. So.
Oh yeah. But anyway, I'm getting way off script here.
Right.
This is the beginning of Mel Gibson's career as a leading man, not the end of it.
Right. This is like
we've got 20 years.
This is like step 2, like because there's the noticing him with some Australian pictures. This is like, okay, he could be a movie star, and then Lethal Weapon just.
Yeah, Lethal Weapon and Lethal Weapon 2, which was the first, I would argue, the first modern breakout sequel.
Right.
That it vastly outperformed its predecessor, despite just being another sequel. It wasn't a case like with Terminator 2 or Rambo 2, where it was, a huge mega event movie even outside of the franchise.
Right.
Well, this was just, it's another Lethal Weapon movie. I love the first one, and they all go see it. The John Wick of its day.
Right.
But this one, it's with the caveat that I think they're all good, and I'm probably going to watch all of them again between now and when this episode's actually going to air.
Yes.
The third one quite a bit.
No, that's good.
I might be in a situation where I like each one more than the next.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know where the rep came from that third one, because every time I've gone to it, like I'm like, it's the thing I like about the series. None of them really are the same.
No.
At all, and I like that. Like,
I think, and again, I say without knowing for sure. I think the third one was so different from the second one, and you had the Tina Turner angle, which made it feel more mainstream, I guess. And it was PG-13, so you had this
right.
Although really none of them are that. But yeah, they're violent, and 1, 3, and 4, or 1, 2, and 4 deserve earn their R ratings.
Right. It goes the route that Conan did that we talked about last week, and then they're like, yeah, maybe the kids want to see this.
Yeah, but I would argue that the third one isn't aggressively less gruesome than the second one.
It might have just been accidentally rated PG. Like they just made the movie they made, and they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's even with a young kid, and that always annoys people.
Kids, there's more.
Yeah,
but the kid's fine in this one. That's fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I watching this one for the first time in a while, it almost feels like a dress rehearsal for Fury Road.
Right.
In that it certainly shares more in common with Fury Road than, say, Beyond Thunderdome or Mad Max.
Right.
Or maybe I should reverse that. Fury Road, if you want to say which Mad Max movie is it playing off of, it's The Road Warrior.
Oh, yeah.
And having said that, The Road Warrior basically invented an entire modern genre. Because again, when you think of post-apocalyptic action movies of that nature, you think of Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Again, Waterworld, or that's the most obvious example, because that basically was a
oh yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised they didn't get sued, rip off of The Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Well,
I like the aesthetic for The Road Warrior would be knocked off countlessly by Italian schlock cinema. But
yes.
it was always the aesthetic. It was never the challenge of making one of these, or the triumph, or the stunts, or like the craft, the talent there. It was always just the look of it was ripped off.
And it's obviously a very lean, very focused, very, frankly, it's character light, plot light. It's all about visceral momentum and movement. But obviously one reason it works is because it does tell a story, it does develop character during its action scenes.
Yeah. Well, it's got that story. People love that anti-hero come to town, doesn't give a shit about anybody but himself. And then gives it all for these people at the end of the day. And there's a lot of there's a good turn in the movie, like towards the end, like with where the big chase ends up and the result of what everybody gave for a decoy. Like it's a wonderful reveal. It's got a lot of memorable like characters, lines, of course, but it's just that even watching today, the action work, the coverage that they get is like astounding. That they got, like, how long did this take? Getting in there, people not dying, just
minor detail.
Yeah, the stunts, just it's insane to watch. This thing is
then and now
impressive.
it's a remarkably staged action adventure picture.
It's still cut
And
well.
When I was growing up, when people, when critics or film nerds, what are the best American, Hollywoodish action movies of all time? It'd be, Raiders, Road Warrior, French Connection, depending on how old you were, Die Hard.
Right. Well, in these movies, you can all.
It was always in the top 10.
Yeah. The camera is its own character in the movie, and you can see what's going on. It cuts for intensity, but isn't overly cut. Like, you get to soak in and watch what's going on and feel it. And then, I don't know, somewhere cutting fast became the thing where it would work for certain movies, but that didn't have to be for all of them. But it's just so nice to see. And Fury Road knows this. Fury Road, you see everything. You get to enjoy it, soak it in. But there's so many action movies that come out after, Bourne Supremacy that you just like, what is it like? I guess it's supposed to be a feeling in the theater, but you watch and you're like, I don't know
obviously Bourne Supremacy, there was a reason why.
Yeah, not everybody can be Paul Greengrass. He's really like honestly, Captain Phillips. Looks great.
I don't like Bourne Ultimatum. I think it suffers from, being like that for no good cause. And also, it's the same friggin' movie.
Well, yeah, that's what they do.
I stupidly watched the Bourne Supremacy right before seeing the Ultimatum. I'd seen the Bourne Supremacy, but rewatching, Thursday night and then Friday night going to see Bourne Ultimatum was like, this is a remake. This is the exact same movie.
Well, Supremacy, Ultimatum, and Jason Bourne are all. If you like The Exercise, that's what it is. It's the spy slasher type thing. Like if you like to see him set up and knocked down by that one guy, boom, there you go.
But it did, even then it threw me for a loop because, see, we love all the James Bond films, but they do try to differentiate themselves from each other. Obviously, same way with the Mission Impossible pictures. I think one of the issues with the Bourne series is that they just keep trying to recapture the genie in the bottle that was the Bourne Supremacy.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Well, also forgetting that the Bourne Identity is pretty damn great too.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that it's made by that same guy too. Like, that's why I've always liked the first one. It was more my wheelhouse, but I like Supremacy too. I have fun with the Jason Bourne movies, but yeah, no, it's no surprise, no secret that Ultimatum's the same. Jason Bourne's the same. The Chems one is a thing that happened, and
that always what amused me about that one is like it was written and directed by Tony Gilroy, who was famously unhappy about to what extent he was involved in the Bourne Ultimatum. So he goes off and makes the spinoff that basically retcons Bourne Ultimatum, so that Bourne was a loser, nothing he did matters, and evil won.
Yes.
Which is a dick move, but I kind of respect it.
Yeah. That's funny stuff. But yeah, no, this movie, everybody, people listen, most of you probably seen The Road Warrior. It's highly recommended. I still find, it's so funny. Like, do people get confused when they went into the theater and saw The Road Warrior and the credits play and it says Mad Max 2? Be like, did I sit in the wrong? Like, what was the awareness on Mad Max when this came out?
I have to imagine, you look at the poster, it's got Mel Gibson with the shotgun walking in the desert, and like that's one of the, you see him pretty damn quickly, so it's not like you think you're in the wrong movie.
Well, but people would go see sequels with that. It was a lot looser audience going like, and
one of the rules is you didn't have to have seen the previous one to enjoy a sequel.
Right. And
you don't need to see Police Academy 2 to understand Police Academy 3.
A lot of them, this movie,
although it helps.
Yeah, this movie, this was a common thing. So when people find it weird watching movies from the 80s and 90s, recaps were a thing. This movie recaps that first movie, so you know right where you are. And like a lot of the like Friday the 13th would show the end of the previous movies in case you aren't going to be able to keep up.
And the Rocky films, of course, made that an art form.
Yeah. So this was because not everybody had VHS.
Karate Kid did that.
Karate Kid did that. Yep. Yeah, pretty much it was a horror trope that did that. But, you know, you're making a sequel like, well, some of these people might not have seen the last one. Let's get them up to speed. And, you know, because it was like, well, has this aired on TV yet? Has it aired on TV that people have yet? And so it was just uncertain. And because, yeah, VHS stuff wouldn't be a big part of everyone's lives until towards the end of the decade.
Yeah.
But,
and, you know, to a certain extent, sequels were not, especially outside of horror, I would argue, sequels were not that prevalent to the point where they were enough of a well-known type of picture that you would expect everyone to have done their homework.
Yeah. Only Stallone seemed interested in them. He was the only non-horror guy that seemed interested.
Because
in
unfortunately,
sequels.
none of his non-Rocky Rambo movies actually were hits up to a point.
Right.
Although maybe Cobra up until the 90s. Tango and Cash made money, but it was really expensive.
Yeah. And then Cameron made the sequel kind of like prestigious. Like it was like, no, these don't have to be.
You know, he accidentally wrecked the entire, you know, I rant about this all the time.
Yeah.
It's because of the sheer success of James Cameron's Pacific sequel sort of let Hollywood think that anyone could do that. And that any vaguely successful genre / sci-fi fantasy property could spawn a big breakout sequel and an ever monetizable franchise. And that's obviously not the case. Curse you, Cameron.
Right. So
That's
yeah,
true. We love Cameron.
We do love Cameron. You got a hard on for Cameron.
Who doesn't, and why not?
Scream too. But yeah, so that's the Road Warrior. Now, as we wrap up, we're going to take a look at the box office report. Which, looking at the movies for this week, and in looking at the box office report, does not add. This one was fun because I was like, this isn't what the legacy of these movies you would think how the box office went for them.
You mean the Last Little Whorehouse in Texas isn't an evergreen classic of our time?
Right, exactly. But just looking at these and going, oh, wow, that's not what knowing how well revered and where these movies are, people were looking for something else this weekend. Obviously. Are you ready there, Scott?
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so let's run down the box office for the weekend.
The top film for the second weekend in a row was Conan the Barbarian, which earned an additional $6.9 million, a 28% drop, despite or because of adding 288 screens. It was playing in approximately 1,685 theaters. And again, I'm assuming at this point, this wasn't a time where you were on more than one screen per theater. So when I say it's in 1,683 theaters, I'm also assuming it's 1,683 screens. Its total was 20 million after 10 days. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid was the top newbie of the weekend. It opened with $4.3 million and 882 screens. A perfectly decent showing for a low-budget, high-concept, star-driven comedy. It would eventually gross approximately $18.2 million on a budget of, I believe, $9 million. And then coming up at number 3, the Unkillable Porkies.
It just does not stop.
I need to watch Porkies at some time so I can, actually talk about it.
It's like the Beverly Hills Cop of '82.
Yeah, basically. So Porkies would make another $2.9 million, dropping less than 1% from weekend 9. It had earned just under $80 million by the end of its 10th weekend. It would eventually make $105 million in North America alone. Again, I think you mentioned this last week, despite being a bigger grossing picture than a lot of well-known snobs versus slobs / R-rated raunch comedies, it doesn't have nearly the reputation / legacy. Probably because it's, it's a bunch of, it's teenage horniness, blah, blah, blah. But whatever, that's a conversation for another day. Actually, after I actually watched the movie. Sword and Sorcerer, 2.1.
You skipped number 4.
Oh shit, minor detail. The Road Warrior, opened at number 4 on 704 theaters with $2.527 million. The picture would eventually go on to earn a perfectly solid $23.6 million domestic. Next weekend, slight spoiler, is Memorial Day weekend. It would add 4 screens for 708 theaters and would earn an additional $2.39 million over the 3-day, the 4-day portion of the Memorial Day weekend. So yeah, small opening, small budget, small reward. I mean, they made a third one, so they were obviously happy with it. Sword of the Sorcerer did $2.1 million. It was up to 14.4 at that point. Fighting Back opened, is that right? This is the second, yeah, that's the second widest movie of the weekend behind Conan and Porkies.
Yeah.
It debuted on 1,104 screens, made $1.624 million from Paramount Pictures, and it would tap out at $3.35 million. Excuse me. Never reaching more than 1,100 screens.
I wonder if that movie had Oscar hopes for Tom Skerritt or something in that too. I wonder.
I do know that it would lose 300 screens in the second weekend of release.
It's not doing well.
Especially back then was unusual. Any other Chariots of Fire is at 51 million. Victor Victoria's at 17 and change. But old Wrong is Right is sticking around. It's been a 41% drop for a $883,000 weekend for a $2.967 million total. And again, when I keep reading off these minuscule opening weekends, I just get PTSD flashbacks to September 2020. Annie would open in 14 screens for a whopping $510,000, giving it a $36,000 per screen average. It would, as you mentioned correctly, would go wide
mid-June, somewhere. It's
mid-June, where it would expand from it. For the first month, it was in 14 screens, and then it would expand to 1,100 screens, where it would make it a $5 million wide release opening weekend.
Paradise dropped out of the top 10 from this week.
That's a shock.
Already gone. And I noticed, so now 8 of the top 10 have at least made $1 million. That was not the case when we started. I think it was the top 6 or 5 made at least $1 million, and now people are starting to head to the movies.
Thank you, Tom and Jerry. Oh, sorry, Force of Habit.
No, thank you. The word of mouth of Porkies. There's a hole in the showers, and he takes his wiener, and and the girls see it, and you just gotta. Oh man, and they bully this nerd kid to try to have sex. It is so funny. Porkies.
What happened when the nerds actually got power? Maybe they had a point. That's a deeper, darker conversation for another day.
Right.
But anyway, I apparently do need to watch. I've never seen Porkies. It's just one that's never been on my radar.
We're gonna have a bonus coverage of Porkies on one of these. That's what. Do people want Porkies? Do you want us to talk about it? We'll see. Maybe we've already done it by the time you've heard it. So.
And that's pretty much it in terms of box office news. Because, again, as is usually the case, at this point in time, you have a handful of openers and a couple holdovers, and everything else is basically, over under $1 million. But that was okay because movies were cheaper. They played longer. You had, especially you would start to get a viable post-theatrical afterlife beyond just selling them to cable TV and regular TV.
Were dollar theaters a thing back then, or were tickets still pretty cheap? That wasn't a...
I have to assume second runs were still a thing. That's a good question.
Probably drive-ins for sure.
Yes.
Second run theaters.
And I imagine, because you had there is not much here on second run theaters. I'll have to look that up. That's actually a good question. I do know, basically Titanic was the last movie to get a halfway decent second run play.
Yeah, I do know. A lot of times, the theaters would look at dead weekends or low, and or if they didn't have a movie to put out for, hey, let's throw Star Wars back in the theaters for a couple weeks.
That's what IMAX has been doing for the last several weeks.
Yeah, you got to go see Venom. Let There Be Carnage.
Yeah, Venom was back in IMAX for a weekend. Then No Time to Die was back in IMAX. Now the Tragedy of Macbeth is getting an IMAX run for a weekend. Which, by the way, I didn't see it in IMAX, but I saw it sitting way too close at the Burbank.
Gotcha.
It looks great in theaters. I imagine it would look very cool in IMAX.
Gotcha.
If you're so inclined.
Which is months ago. So.
Oh, that's right. Shit, come on.
That's kind of fun. That's kind of fun with this. Like, why are they? I'm looking at my show times. It is.
What is this? The weekend of the 21st? What are we really talking about now? Downtown Abbey. Downtown Abbey, The Deadly Art of Illusion.
Looks great in IMAX. Oh man. Oh.
I can't believe Maggie Smith didn't die again.
Yes.
Anyway.
But yeah, that'll do it for this weekend. This weekend of May. Scott, as always, appreciate you joining me. Before we go, let people know where they can keep up with you.
Forbes.com. Please Google some variation of Forbes Scott Mendelson, the ticket booth. My Twitter feed is at Scott Mendelson. And that's pretty much it for social media. I have a Facebook account. That's mostly for cat pictures and kid pictures and, non-scandalous takes.
Exciting cat pictures and kid pictures.
Yes.
And I have a Twitter and Instagram at Brandon Porky UHD. Scott and I will be back next week where Rocky stops a young, hungry underdog's rise to fame. Raul Julia makes an art form of escaping. William Shatner finds himself in a slasher movie. That and more as we continue the last weekend of May in the summer of 1982. Until then, stay film positive.
The summer of 82 at 40.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. The Summer of 82 at 40 and News of the Moment themes by Press Maxon. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.